You are listening to the ForceCom Frontline, bringing you to our soldiers on the front lines of readiness. Hey everyone, welcome to the ForceCom Frontline. I'm Ashley and I'm your host. Today we are joined by Major General Milford H. Beagle Jr., the Commanding General of the 10th Mountain Division, located at Fort Drum, New York. Fort Drum is home to approximately 35,000 soldiers and family members and is located just 30 minutes from the Canadian border in upstate New York. General Beagle took command of the division a year ago and since then has worked hard at connecting with soldiers and improving their quality of life. Later this summer, he will assume command of the Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So we're excited that we were able to get you in here, sir, to talk on the podcast before you leave the ForceCom team.
No, this is great. These are fun.
And you happen to be at ForceCom, so we get to do it in person too. So
yeah.
Rather than over Teams or Zoom like we normally do.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have you in here with us.
I'm excited to be here, Ashley. This is good.
All right. So I'm just going to start. I grew up in Watertown. We were just talking about it. So I know that the relationship between the community and Fort Drum is a very strong one and a very important one. Can you talk about that relationship a little bit and maybe some of the things that are going on?
Yeah. So, and you know Watertown. And Watertown is probably the most embracing community I've ever served in 32 years. And there have been some that have been close. We just left South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina's home for us.
Yeah.
And Columbia is probably,
amazing.
Right there with Watertown. And much different in terms of where they sit on the two ends of the spectrum. But it's really the warmth of the people. I mean, it's how embracing the community is to the installation. And, I tell people it's not only that we are a part of the community, we live in the community. So, I mean, we're absolutely just kind of tethered together with that community. And things have to be reciprocal. And we typically say, what's good for Fort Drum is good for Watertown and vice versa. It has to be. It has to be that way. And so there's a lot of communication, always, key connections, with the mayor, with the sheriff, with everybody. The educators, I mean, you name it. I was in a third grade class reading, a story, but that's our kids. Our kids, they go to school in those communities, and we all really have to be connected and help each other. And it really does, help the families when they come there to understand it's not only the post good, but the community around the post is just as good.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little before, but I think that's important, especially in a place like Fort Drum, where a lot of people have this negative perception. Mm-hmm. I'm going up to, upstate New York. It snows a lot. I'm near the Canadian border.
It's cold.
Yeah, I'm going to freeze, feet of snow, whatever it is. Yeah. But, you get out into those communities around Fort Drum and Watertown, and there is so much that they offer.
Yeah, and people don't want to leave. I mean, they get there and they don't want to leave. I mean, if I had my choice, me and the wife both, if we could just stay there, we'd be totally fine. And people are like, are you out of your mind?
Right.
We're like, no. I mean, even in the winters, I mean, now you having grown up in that, all your life, much different than us. It's still a novelty to us. So, I mean, we're cool with it. This year's like -20 was the coldest, but like with the wife, she just figures out, what pair of boots. I'm like, this pair of boots for this temperature. So she's good. Yeah. I mean, because you know the deal. There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes.
Absolutely.
If you don't dress right, then okay, it's going to suck a little bit. But, if you got the right gear, which we do in Army parlance, and then civilian, if you got the right gear, you're totally fine.
And like, again, we talked before, there's the river there, and the community of Alexandria Bay, I know, is super supportive of the installation. They have you guys just had a Mountain Fest every year up at...
Well, at A-Bay, they do Riverfest.
Riverfest,
so
sorry.
Riverfest,
Every year, and that's a big event, open to soldiers, go to the castle.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that there's a castle up there.
The castles and all the houses. And then the coolest thing is whenever you're, on the river, and then like you're doing the boat tours, the guy are like, okay, look out, over your left or whatever they call on a boat. It's like, you'll see the border between the U.S. and Canada, and people will like look over. Yeah. And it's like, they're looking for a line. It's like, gotcha. So, I mean, but it is awesome to is. Just be up there. I mean, the whole area is just gorgeous, as you know.
I often say that I haven't gone back to visit in a long time, and I have friends, and my parents just moved down here, actually. But I want to go back and visit because it is a great area.
Yeah.
So,
we put the museum in between the main post and the airfield.
Okay.
So it used to be on post. Right. And a lot of folks couldn't get access to the post, to go see the museum. Sure. So now, with it being located between, it's right there on 26. So as you drive between the main post and the airfield, anybody can go to the museum now.
Yeah.
And so community, the schools,
That's awesome.
everybody. So it's just right there, easy access. We did our first grand opening. Let's say first grand. We did a soft opening and then a grand opening on the 21st of June. And like awesome turnout, and people are like, I didn't know this about Fort Drum and the connection with the community.
Yeah, it's great. So I have heard that you have a saying, planting a tree for others to enjoy the shade. Can you elaborate on what that means when we talk about the community?
Yeah, so planting seeds. And I always talk about, you plant seeds and you'll never reap the harvest, of that tree, or you never, get the shade of that tree. And it's always thinking about things forward. Never about, your time, my time at Drum. It's about those that come in behind me.
Sure.
How do you make things better? It's not just, my tenure. It's the tenure of the person behind me and the person behind that person, and so on and so forth, and things that, we'll never see. Thing that we're going to do next month is have the community come together, and we're going to talk Fort Drum in the community 2030, 2040.
Wow.
Because the community has to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
And, just like things that they do, you talk about Samaritan, one of your kids being born at Samaritan. Well, a lot of people don't know Samaritan spent like $50 million of their own money way back when to build like probably the world's best, maternity ward I've ever seen. I mean, ever. Because 50% of the babies in that area are from the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum.
Right.
And that's what a great community does for you. And so to look into the future and figure out what is it we really need? What do families need? How are things changing? And a lot of things are changing. Yeah. We bring the community in to talk, our strategy. I wouldn't call it a strategy at this point, but more of a concept. Is so our community can inform us and vice versa, so we stay connected like we've always been.
Sure. So I'm going to switch gears now, because I could probably talk about the community in that area for a while. Yeah. But since 2001, when the war in Afghanistan began, the 10th Mountain Division was one of the most deployed units. Mm-hmm. And so now that conflict is over, how are the soldiers of the division staying ready?
Yeah, so a lot of different ways to stay ready. Number one is training. So we're still sending soldiers to the Joint Readiness Training Center down at Fort Polk. We have our brigade there, still at Fort Polk as well. And right now, today, we have soldiers in over 9 countries. So we're still
going.
Just still going.
Yeah.
Nothing really stops. And we're the only division right now that's still tethered to CENTCOM. So most people think, well, we're out of Afghanistan, and then they think with that we're out of Iraq and Syria. And we're not. We're still there. And that is, the forces out of 10th Mountain that are there. And then others that, we just had soldiers come back from UCOM, so Europe theater, so all over the place. So still, a lot of deployments going, and then everything in between is like training for the next thing to come up.
Well, and Fort Drum's a little unique in that you do is it Arctic training where you go up to
Vermont?
Yes.
Yeah.
And put on all like the snow gear, and you climb the mountain with like the picks, right?
Yeah,
Am I making this up?
No, the ice axe.
Yes.
We have all that stuff at home. We can do that there. And the running joke is always, we wear our mountain tabs and everything else. And then when people get there, they're like, "Hey, where are the mountains?" We're like,
"Not a mountain.
Don't worry about it. We know where to go to get to the mountains." And so we still do they call it the basic mountaineering up in Vermont, Camp Ethan Allen. But the snowshoeing, the skiing, all of that. Oh, we can do, as 8 months out of the year. Yeah. So
you're not wrong.
So we do that quite a bit. We get that in daily.
Yeah.
And it is the best part of being there, because nothing stops the division from training. And people are like, what do you do when it's 20 below? Like, we put on snowshoes and we go outside and we still do PT.
Which is something that you just don't think about when, you're down here in North Carolina, it doesn't, we don't get snow here, and you're not snowshoeing, and it's hot all year.
Yeah. You get a little bit of ice, everything stops.
Yeah.
And the deal. You'll get a complete 3 or 4 feet and nothing stops.
Right. I can remember we would get a foot of snow, and we'd still have to go to school the next day.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I love telling soldiers that in the newcomers brief. I'm like, it's going to be 8 months of winter, but don't worry, our summers are very beautiful, and it's going to snow. We have a window that's on the first floor. I'm like, snow will be past that window seal. And I said, don't worry about it. You guys, you don't get snow days. We don't do snow days here. And everybody looks kind of depressed. I'm like, nothing stops.
Yeah,
nothing
it keeps going. So switching gears again a little bit, much of the Army, Fort Drum has not been immune to suicides. Mm-hmm. It's an ongoing thing throughout the Army. Can you talk about some of the things happening at that division to prevent these tragedies in the future?
Yeah, a lot of key things. And the first thing we had to do is just rethink how we viewed suicide.
Absolutely.
And so there was a great book that somebody recommended to me called Rethinking Suicide.
Yes.
And Joe Garrett's read that book.
We had him on the podcast.
Yeah, and so we had the author come there, Craig Bryan.
Yes.
And so he helped us just kind of rethink just how we look at suicide, how we approach it. You can't brief your way out of it, which is one of the things that he says, which I love.
Yeah.
And then I brought somebody else in later, a guy named David Bartley, and he brings in the human connection, and it's really about connection. You just have to connect with people. It's not very hard to do. And we had when I first took command a couple of months after, we had 3 in a 48-hour period, which was like just tragic.
Yeah.
And everybody was looking for some type of connection.
Right.
Everything else, and like they were all 3 different units. Didn't know each other. Just bad timing, all at the same time. And it was really, as you peel a lot of them back, it's like life skills.
Yeah.
Life skill type issues, all 3 relation related. And one thing that I did as a policy, as a directive, was have the commanders, every suicidal ideation that we have, a battalion or brigade commander has to talk to that soldier.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't because, it's the commander. It was allowing them to see, behind the curtain a little bit. The things that they were going through was like just life stress, things that they can get beyond. But your subordinate level leaders, sometimes they don't peel enough of it back to really figure out. It's like, oh, that is a bad problem, but it's not a life-ending problem. We just got to help you through that problem.
Right.
But now that my commanders can see it, because when they start doing these, we call them interviews. They're not really an interview. It's just a conversation like we're having now. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, we can fix this. We can get you a resource, get you help, you name it. And really, it was just the connection. Just sit down and talk to the person. And that gave us a real boost in getting all of our leaders at echelon to just have the conversation before the problem comes up. But you got to know these problems, because all the things that's going to happen at the end of the day is these small problems are just going to add up. Absolutely. And then they just keep adding up, and at some point in time, it's going to be so much pressure, whereas we could probably see some of those small problems if we're connected before they even start to build.
Yeah. Now, have you seen that soldiers are receptive to using the resources that are available, ACS and the MFLIC and all of that?
Yeah. And so we do something unique. And again, we kind of steal from different divisions as well. So anybody that comes up with something great is like, we'll look at it, we'll take it. And, just getting all of our in-processing soldiers to go through and talk to the MFLEC. It doesn't need to be a chaplain, doesn't need to be behavioral health.
Yeah.
It's like talk to the MFLEC first, and then kind of see. And then that kind of helps us triage people, early on. Because the stress of transition, the stress of a new marriage, the stress of, a new location, all that is there at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
And then it's just taking some of that stress off
early
on, and then just kind of monitoring from that point. And it's worked out very well for us to this point.
I think putting that soldier in front of an MFLIC right on, who maybe they wouldn't have reached out to that person, but now they have met somebody who does that. And so they're a lot more comfortable going back to that person or, reaching out for help again.
Yeah. And my goal is, it's got to be the first line leaders first. And then we have a lot of other resources that we can use. Oh, yeah. Because I love it when I talk to the chaplains and they'll go, sir, we don't do anything magical. Think about it. When, they send a soldier to us, the soldier goes out and he or she's okay. I'm like, chaplain, what did you do? Chaplain's like, I connected with them.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we can do that because we're around them like all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's something that we can't handle or we do need somebody else, then we've got layers of resources that we can leverage, But it's really us being connected at the point of the soldier, like from the start.
And so, we do foundational readiness days now. How have you guys utilized that?
A lot of different ways. So, every unit has their approach at what they do during the foundational readiness days. And some of it's based on what they find in their climate surveys, just kind of what they're kind of hearing from internal to their unit to use that time. But the feedback that we get is really good. A lot of cases, you would never hear soldiers talk about, we need more of this. But when I see feedback that says, well, we need more foundational training or more time for it, you're like, good. Because they're able to conversate. And I think that's the key thing is soldiers, leaders getting to know their soldiers, which is what it really, gets us in at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to feel valued too. And I think that's part of what Dr. Bryan says is about your value of life. And having that, wanting to live for something. Right. And knowing that those other people are there for you too.
And people want to be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Just appreciate it, encourage. Yeah. Nobody wakes up every day going, hey, I want to just do bad today. Everybody's going to try to do something good, Yeah. And just a little pat on the back here or there.
I'm with you, sir.
That's all you have to do.
So you just recently released a policy that in some outlets it was, leave soldiers alone, and it's a cell phone policy that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But really it was more about setting expectations, before that soldier goes home, and letting them go home and be with their family and not coming to work until the next day when they're supposed to be there, and nothing unexpected. Yeah. So can you talk about why this was important to you? More than just predictability, what do you hope the effect is?
Well, one, it goes back to the stress we talked about.
Yeah.
Right? That's one stressor. Because, as we talk to soldiers, the Sergeant Major and I both, one of the stressors were they couldn't disconnect from work. Phone is constantly going off, 11 o'clock at night. It's their leader. And a lot of times it's things that could have waited to the next day.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
But if you're spending time with your kids, spending time with your wife, or just, spending time with yourself, doing something, and you're constantly worried about your phone, and it's your leader giving you information that should have been put out at work, you're like, okay, we've got to break that cycle. And that was part of it. And it links more so, back to just good training management. We have calendars, we have schedules, you name it. If we use those things, then I'm not texting you going, hey, Ashley, tomorrow at 9 o'clock we have X, Y, and Z. Yeah. But I'm texting you at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. That's bad on me. That is totally my fault. But now you're waiting because if that's my tendency, then every night before you go to bed or when you wake up, you're tethered to your phone.
Absolutely.
And it's like, and I told soldiers, it's not a ban on cell phones. I want you to have your phone. What I don't want you to have is a leash. Yeah. Right? Because right now your phone is a leash. Yeah. So you can have your phone. You can do whatever you want to do with it. I do not want it. Yeah. Right? But I don't want you to have that leash that's attached to your phone.
Yeah. As a spouse, that sounds great. I know that my husband has had times where I will ask him, what are you doing for PT tomorrow? Or do you have PT tomorrow? When do you have to be there? He's like, oh, I'm waiting. I don't know yet. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, but my morning depends on what you're doing. Yeah. Right. I have to get to work and the kids have to get to where they need to go. And so this sounds awesome from my standpoint.
Yeah. So it's all those second, third order effects. Yeah. Even the spouses, the family, it all connects. Again, like I said, it's the second, third order effects of that. Just one simple thing. It's like, okay, we just got to break that cycle and then get ourselves straight, do training management properly. If, we're doing formations, things that we need to do, the information is there. If you forgot it at the end of the day, okay, take that as a lick on you. And then the next day, here's the corrections, here's the adjustments, and we go from there. Yeah. But it's much better than text at midnight.
I'm not even awake at midnight, so.
Yeah. But some soldiers do. the sad stories, Ashley, we've heard from soldiers is some do. It really stresses them because they know,
I bet it does.
Late night, that phone's going to buzz and they're going to wake up. So then they're not getting sleep. So you're not getting sleep because you're responding.
So, like you said, all of these second and third order effects and all of that mounting pressure, and what could that lead to on the soldier who doesn't have all of the life skills like we talked about before?
Yeah. And one thing I put in the policy was, we did WTF radio, right? And then they were like, FOMO and FOBLO. I said, never heard of that. It was like feeling of missing out and feeling of being left out. Because again, you're not in the group text.
Right.
It's that constant reaction. Like, am I missing something? Or am I being left out? Because you got the text, I didn't get the text. So again, we kind of cut, that as well because it's just another stressor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it hasn't been in effect for very long, but have you gotten feedback on it?
Tons.
Yeah, I bet you. I bet you have.
But internally, the feedback has been very good.
Okay.
Every morning we get small samplings, and as we go out and talk to soldiers, you get feedback there as well. But every morning I can rely on written feedback from soldiers that pull duty, and they'll give us improves and sustains and things like that. And one is always cell phone policies. Awesome. It's like, okay, good to go.
That's awesome.
That's coming from the ground up.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I wouldn't say mixed. There's still a lot of great feedback, even external. Yeah. To the division, and those that have read it and understand it, the intent of it, because you can't cover every single caveat. And there's a lot of complaints about, well, what about this? If my wife is sick or my kids, I'm like, yeah, have your phone. That's an emergency. That's like nobody's gonna get. It's non-punitive. It's not like you're gonna get an Article 15. If you're caught with your phone, it's just the legitimate things that you need to do with your phones, do those. Right? Yeah. The things that I call, say illegitimate, but, after hours, like, don't do that unless it's an emergency. Yeah. Unless I'm checking on you, those type things. Sure. But I would say overwhelming positive feedback.
That's awesome. And It makes sense though, right? I mean, why
Yeah.
wouldn't there be positive feedback from it? I mean, you're telling me that when I leave for the day, I don't have to worry about you calling me and telling me everything's changed and now I have to do something different. I mean, that sounds awesome.
But you'd be surprised on social media. Some people,
Oh.
I mean, but again, they're outside the circle. It's like, oh, well, this is, and I'm like, okay.
Right.
Well, like you said, I mean, and that's the key message, the sermon I go back to. It's like, it's just common sense. I mean, if you're okay with somebody texting you all times of night, morning, good on you.
Yeah.
Right? This guy, not so much. And I know our soldiers, not so much either.
Well, and everybody wants to disconnect a little bit and, not have work in the back of their mind the entire time they're watching they're binging something on whatever streaming platform they're watching.
I'm the same way. I'm human. I mean,
Right.
I keep the two phones on me. And I'm like, the one I'm most nervous about is the work phone when it rings.
Right.
Yeah, you're always on edge,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think though with the social media thing too, I think a lot of times, a headline says one thing, and then when you actually read what has happened or what the policy is, the headline maybe doesn't necessarily match up. It drew people in, but all they read was the headline.
Yeah.
So when you dig a little deeper, and that's I think even me when I first thought, I was like, oh, then you read it and you're like, this sounds great.
Yeah. The interview, I got an interview like the next day.
Yeah.
With, military.com, like the very next day. and he kept saying, it's like, so you just want, soldiers to be left alone. I'm like, yeah, but, and he kept circling back to that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I want them left alone, but here's the reasons why,
Right.
Behind it.
Right.
But still, the tagline was good. Like you said, it got people's attention.
It did.
And then it kind of pulled them in. So
Yeah.
I applaud him.
Absolutely.
On doing that.
Yeah. Well, and applaud you too. I mean, it's a big thing, especially when you talk about cell phones and you talk about like this day and age and people, I mean, you better not take my cell phone away. You better not tell me I can't have my cell phone or, I mean, we can't have our cell phone in this building. And sometimes I'm like, well, how am I going to connect to somebody if I need to? But it's okay.
So it's working.
Yeah. So speaking of social media, you have been active on social media and use social media as a way to help soldiers and communicate with them. So in a space that is often filled with misinformation, why was it important for you to connect there?
You said the key word is about the space, right?
Yeah.
If you're not in that space, somebody's going to be in that space for you.
Absolutely.
And again, the space that I'm in, I have to own that space, and I want to be in that space, because if not, somebody's going to insert themselves, and the misinformation, the disinformation, I mean, all those type things, whereas you kind of cut a lot of that chatter in between you and those that you lead. And so there's no reluctance whatsoever in terms of, people reaching out or telling me stuff for feedback, but it's great feedback too.
Yeah.
Because it's coming direct from me. There's nothing in the middle of that, which is okay. I mean, but it's a space that you have to, be involved in to understand like your formation, your community, and the environment. And it's great. It never gets hard. And people are like, you spend a lot of time on social media. I'm like, no, I don't. I spend like 30 minutes, but I mean, or about an hour, out of a day.
Yeah.
But that's over the course of a day. It doesn't take very long. And if it's, negative or bad, I'm not like, spinning up on those things. I mean, I'm focusing on like our space, our team, our environment, and just keep the interactions going.
So I'm going to be a naysayer for a second. What do you say to those people who are like, well, that's just his PAO doing his social media for him?
Inbox me. Inbox me. Because it's me. And I tell people, I'm like, I'm my own PAO.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against my PAO team.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
We all work in sync. I mean, they do different things for the command, but when it comes to me and my name and my title, it's like, that's me.
That's you.
Right? And then they kind of know it. And I use the kind of a guide is like a little bit of personal, professional, and never political, kind of the 3 Ps. Because again, you know it's me. If I'm showing you a picture of me and my grandbaby, then okay, my PAO is not doing that.
Absolutely.
Or what I'm cooking for dinner, kind of thing. That's not PAO. That's me doing that. But it creates that connection.
Well, and I think that's super important too. I think, and I don't think a lot of leaders do this, but to know that it is the leader behind the account, and it's not, a lot of people are easy to say some canned message, nothing's going to happen if I message this general on Facebook or social media or Twitter or whatever it is. So to be able to go directly to the source and have those conversations, I think is important. Yeah.
And you help a lot of people that way too.
Yeah.
I mean, and I learned a long time ago with social media, you probably provide more help there in a form that, most would say is like, oh, it's very hard. I wouldn't want to do that. but you're providing people that need help. Somebody will reach out all the time and go, have this situation, but you're in the position to solve the problem.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's like the position I'm sitting in right now, there's a lot of problems I can solve that those below me can't. And so you're like, oh, that's kind of easy. I mean, it's a big problem to them.
Yeah.
But you're like, oh, I can solve that.
But I think that's so awesome that they can go right to you through these platforms and know that you're gonna do what you can to help them.
Yeah, and so my sergeant major's the same way. He's bigger on Instagram, so Instagram is his thing, and I mean, and he will absolutely do it, and
that's awesome.
And it's a different dimension of like leadership. It doesn't take over physical in person presence type leadership, but it's another way of leading. If you need help, I mean, that's what our job is: identify and meet needs of others, and that's just another venue of doing that.
So, what would you say to somebody who has shied away from that space? Maybe they just have never been into social media and haven't wanted to, put themselves out there in their position. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one, don't be afraid. I mean, never be afraid.
Sure.
Of anything. Because I think a lot of people are like, trolls will jump on me,
Absolutely.
or this will happen, and all those type things. But it depends on kind of what you said is your standards, your principles. And like I'm never going to go negative.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get in a fight with anybody because that's not the purpose. The purpose is for those around me and those that I lead, and it's never really about me.
Yeah.
Granted, you may see a lot of my pictures, but don't go into it with a negative mindset, because you're probably going to get a lot of negativity out of it.
Yeah.
And if you notice, a lot of my posts, our posts, it's about the community, it's about our soldiers, what we're doing, those type things, and it's highly positive because there's a lot of negative out there, and it's like, okay,
there sure is.
Yeah, we're not going to play.
Now, I also think it's awesome that you share pictures of your family and your barbecue and everything. I mean, because you are a person too. While maybe you have 2, almost 3 stars on your chest, you are a person as well, and you have grandbabies and have barbecues and all.
Yeah, we're all the same people. The rank is different, but we're all human.
Yeah. So we're running out of time, but as you get ready to leave the division for your next assignment, what advice would you offer to leaders regarding engaged leadership and its importance?
Engagement costs you nothing. It's free. It's just like thinking, right?
Yeah.
To be engaged, it costs you absolutely nothing. Even though a little bit of prep, maybe, with notes, those kind of things, but really day to day, just talking to people, being amongst people, it costs you nothing.
Yeah.
And even when you think about it in terms of time, it's like, think of where your priorities are. People are a priority, so I had an old boss who once told me a lack of time is a lack of priorities. So if you don't have time to do it, then you really don't have priorities. So that's, the key message I would lay out. And the higher you go, there are going to be so many more things that you can do that because of your position, because of your rank, that you can do. And they're very easy to do. You imagine a young sergeant walking in somewhere and getting a bunch of the hand and you name it, you go in after that. And I mean, I don't want to be... I use a lot of metaphors.
I mean, you're not wrong.
And analogies, kind of thing. And granted, we're in 18th Airborne Corps, and you have the dragon as the symbol. And I'm like, just don't call the dragon, because I said, but that's every leader. I was like, that little private goes in.
Yeah.
People will know at some point they're a little bit closer to the dragon, because if the sergeant comes, the lieutenant comes, it shouldn't take that. But you're just getting closer to the dragon. It's like, don't bring the dragon in, whereas you should have did that anyway. Sometimes it's just customer service. Just be nice. Very simple things. Answer a question.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So.
Yeah. And we should all be nice, and we should all want to help each other, honestly. I mean,
be kind, be humble, be thankful. That's like the 3 key things.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about a lot of different things, but I just want to, before I let you go, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
No, you hit a lot. You hit a lot, and the fact that coming from drum and like being here for the next couple of days is like hot. So I can't wait to go home.
At least you're in AC right now, because tomorrow morning it's going to be hot and we won't be in AC.
Yeah, see, that's why we love Fort Drum. And people that want to come to Fort Drum, I'm telling you, it once you get there, you will never want to leave.
I mean, like I said before, the river and Clayton, Alexandria Bay, Cape Vincent, all of those places right on the river and the lake are like my favorite places. And when I go home, those are the places that I visit.
And everything is relatively close.
It is.
Like I said, Canada, 30 minutes.
Right? You can go to Canada on the weekend.
Yeah.
And get some good poutine.
Yeah. Which I've not had yet. I asked somebody to describe it. It's like, well, you just have to have it.
You do. You need to go to Canada though. And Brockport, even right in Brockport is there's some good poutine there.
Yeah.
So
I gotta try it. That's on the bucket list before we leave.
Awesome. Well, sir, I appreciate you coming in and talking to me. I was really looking forward to this because my connection to Fort Drum. So thank you again.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ashley.